Sometimes you just gotta go for it, you know?
And then once you find out what you want, spend the rest of your natural life waking up and going after it. That's what I do. I wake up every single day and I go after what I want. But if you don't know what you want, what are you even waking up for?
Welcome back to the channel. Have you ever thought, how do people do it? How do they defy the odds and bend reality to their will, creating a life that everybody else dreams about? As someone chasing my own dreams, I have this thought from time to time, and I think it boils down to the denial of any other reality. It's saying the reality in my head is the reality I'm gonna live, and there is no plan B. Now, some people may call that attitude reckless, and the more obligations and responsibilities you have, the harder it is to live like that. But in order to mold your own destiny, it kind of requires that type of conviction. So today, we're gonna talk about somebody who went from being a bartender in New York City to selling their company to Adobe for $1.3 billion. And we'll see what kind of lessons we can learn from his journey. This story starts out when Emery Wells was about 25 years old, bartending in New York City. He'd moved there from Miami with hopes of becoming a filmmaker, yet somehow found himself working at a bar. Lucky for him, the nightlife in New York was full of other dreamers, and he built his network while bartending and found himself working on short films and video productions. Now, the catalyst for his hero arc comes when he goes to this industry trade show with a friend from work, where this new company called Red Digital Cinema is announcing the release of their new digital camera that's gonna flip the film industry upside down. Now, if you don't know, Red cameras have kind of become the industry standard in Hollywood for the past several years. And in 2006, when they released their first camera, it was practically the only camera that could do 4K compressed raw footage. Emery jumped on the chance to own this camera, and he put down the $1,000 deposit, maxing out his credit cards right there at that trade show. Then about a year and a half later, he had to come up with the $17,000 that the camera actually cost. It was a huge risk, but somehow he managed to scrape together the money. You see, there were only about 100 of these cameras in the nation at the time, and people were dying to get their hands on one, which spurred the creation of his video editing company, Adobe, in 2007. This was a service-based business, which wasn't the easiest to scale, but by 2014, they were doing $1 million a year in revenue, working with the likes of Saturday Night Live, Coca-Cola, and Pfizer. Now, while Emery was running this company, him and one of his employees, John Traver, developed a piece of software to help them with collaboration during post-production. This was something that they had designed for themselves to kind of make their life easier. But as fate would have it, it was something the industry really wanted. And suddenly they were in the SaaS business. So once they realized their little pet project might be useful to others, they tried to take it to market. They finished the application and tried to get funding, but that didn't go so well. So they launched Frame.io themselves as a standalone tool. At launch, they had 15,000 clients sign up, and in a short time they were doing $30,000 a month in recurring revenue. So then Emery faced another big decision. He couldn't run Frame.io and Catabatic at the same time. So he chose to give up a stable $1 million a year business in hopes that Frame.io would grow to something much larger than that. He spun down Catabatic and focused all his energy on Frame.io. And off of their initial 15,000 subscribers and $30,000 in monthly revenue, they were able to acquire $2 million in seed funding. And over the next 5 years, they raised nearly $100 million. And all of this led to Adobe purchasing Frame.io for $1.3 billion in an all-cash transaction, which to this day is one of the largest purchases as far as valuation goes, because at the time of purchase, Frame.io was only doing $55 million in annual revenue. And I use the term only $55 million relatively. But Emery got a huge payday and a new job as the VP of Digital Marketing at Adobe. So a quick recap of the things I think we can learn from Emery's journey. Number one, believe in yourself. And I don't want this to sound like some kind of after school motivation special, but I mean, he took some very big chances and he believed he was capable of delivering on these promises. It takes a lot of self-confidence to run a business or to, leave a stable source of income for chances of something greater. He found a pain point, and by fixing that pain point for himself, he was able to monetize that, and as they say, the rest is history. Don't be afraid to take risk or bet on yourself. The two big risks that Emery took were purchasing that Red Digital Cinema camera when he only had $1,000, and then trying to figure out how he was gonna make up that 17 grand that he needed. He walked away from a business that was doing $1 million in revenue with only 4 employees to pursue something that he thought would turn out to be greater. Most people would not do that. I mean, even if you think on that $1 million, maybe he was taking home $300,000 a year. It's hard to convince somebody to shut that down and go in a completely different direction on something that is not yet proven. And I mean, at the time, Frame.io was doing $30,000 in revenue. So let's say that was $360,000 a year. Its revenue was $360,000 a year, and he shut down a business that was doing $1 million a year in revenue to pursue it. If he hadn't believed in himself, what would he do? At the end of the day, I really like to read and learn about stories like this, because as a business owner, a founder, and someone trying to build a giant business, it's really cool to hear about how other people did it and the struggles that they go through and the chances that they took. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is just founders, you have to be very risk tolerant. A lot of people are risk adverse, and they fall into the category of people that should probably stay working a 9-to-5. If you don't have a tolerance for risk, and if you're not capable of putting everything on the line for something that you think is going to work, then you're never going to make it. It takes that kind of conviction in order to, you're basically changing destiny. You're moving stars when you try to start your own business and grow it into something huge. So it's kind of cool to see when it works out, like it did for Emery. I mean, doing $55 million a year in revenue is huge. But to parlay that into a $1.3 billion buyout is insane. Now, granted, he didn't take all of that money. He had a co-founder. He had, I believe, 3 or 4 rounds of investments, but it's still a huge chunk of change for someone. And he's still leading up the company inside of Adobe, and I think that's pretty cool. He gets to see his dreams realized and also get a huge payday. So anyway, I just wanted to make a quick video about that. I found the story interesting, thought I would share it with you guys. If you don't find it interesting, turn this video off. But yeah, so until next time, I will see you guys later. Have you appreciated my attempt at my new release schedule every Tuesday and every Friday? I'm trying. Let's see if this comes out on Tuesday.